look, we're having a lot of fun around here. And when we have a lot of fun, we like to bring in people that we like and we have fun with, who also happen to be amongst the smartest people that we know. And in this case...
What am I here for?
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but over the last few months, you've grown taller, you've gotten skinnier and more handsome.
I did, and I lost 20 pounds.
Also joining the rare, 3-time appearance Ruthless guy, which we reserve for very few individuals.
I'm flattered.
Chris LaCivita, ladies and gentlemen.
Good to see you guys.
It's
great to be here.
I mean,
the famous guy at the end.
How about that?
Oh, my God.
Hardest working journalist in the business.
He most certainly is. He most certainly is.
What'd you make of that?
Well, I mean, I was thrilled for you guys and obviously for John, who's such a great guy. But, it's literally I know that some folks maybe in the White House press room wouldn't have taken it this way. And several of those folks are we know and we've worked with for many years. And they do their jobs. But, it's a new day and people consume media differently now and they get their news differently. Through different, medians. And, of course, having you guys to be the first, I think, from the podcast space was amazing. But, this should not really surprise anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, except maybe, the legacy media. But
they think they just own those seats.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. But, we do, in all our survey work and when we do polls and all this stuff in campaigns, we always ask people, where do you get your news?
Yeah.
Because it's very important because it also, drives our spend and, who we talk to and this kind of thing. And, not everybody is watching the 6:30 news.
Right.
Or 6 o'clock in Brett's case, to get their information. And not everybody is, reading the New York Times or the Compost or, I say that with a degree of affection, but sort of. But they just don't. As a matter of fact, I think the most consistent number that we see in some of our data is that people who get their information from newspapers is below 17%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, it's about 12 on average. So, there's a reason why campaigns have never really advertised in newspapers. If you see a campaign, I'm not talking about like a public affairs campaign, but an actual political campaign, buying ads, in a newspaper, they're idiots.
Yeah, well, it's like billboards, right?
Yeah, they're like billboards. Yeah. Now you do billboards occasionally to troll.
Yeah, the troll.
The trolling, but
important trolling.
You can't really drive a message as you're going 80 down 95, right? But people aren't doing that in newspapers, and so you've got to shake it up and make it different, and which is actually part of the reason why. On the Trump campaign, we were so successful in meeting the goals that we established in the campaign to win the younger vote.
Yeah.
Because we went to where the voters are.
Yeah.
And, it's not about conforming people to get their news from one place. That's not good.
Right.
So the competition and having everybody, competition for news and the competition for information is I think, key to maintaining the democracy, frankly.
You're right. But I also think it's really impressive in that so much in our collective world over the years has been about campaign consultants, campaign managers, as you and Susie were on Trump 24. You don't get fired for doing things that everybody else has always done, right? You get fired for taking risks and finding audiences and doing things that are outside of the norm of what people should be doing. And yet, your all's view going into this is we're going to take risks because it's worth the risk, that we need to go out and meet people where they are and break the whole, sort of establishment, both on the media side and the political consulting side, of what it means to drive a message and get to the target audience here.
Right.
And, look, you had to have thought about that somewhere along the way when you're laying out a game plan that runs contrary to what presidential campaign managers had done year after year after year.
Yeah, but there's also this, the old adage that at least we had when I was my time in the Marine Corps, and I know it's still something that that is used to this day, which is no plan survives first contact.
Yeah.
So, you can have the greatest plans in the world, and, the other side gets a say. And for us, it was, we had the Biden campaign, then the Harris campaign, then we had, all the media, then we had the Justice Department, then then we had the Iranians, then we had the crazies, then, every single day tested the integrity of what we wanted to accomplish. But I'll tell you what made it so much easier. When you have a candidate, like we had in Donald Trump, who you would not be penalized for being aggressive. So you could be aggressive, you could be different, you could be daring almost, and not have to worry about a second guessing, which was for in
That's
any
the biggest
campaign.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the biggest thing, and so it gives you a degree of latitude and a degree of confidence. But if you're out pushing a particular message, or we want to drive a particular issue, the boss just makes it so easier because 9 times out of 10, he was usually the one out there first. So all we had to do was get in line.
I have a question right along the vein of that. Is the campaign you ran was against so much conventional wisdom. For decades, Republicans were told, don't go after younger voters. Number one, they don't turn out and they won't vote for us. Number two, high turnout hurts Republicans. Both of those you proved wrong. High turnout only helped President Trump get elected. Younger voters came out in droves. When was the decision made that we are going to specifically try to make these things happen? And what did you do to make those things happen?
Well, it was a couple things. First of all, you're led by a great candidate who literally, there's somebody who literally leads from the front, right? So he's taking
we've
the
seen
lead.
that.
Literally and figuratively. And then, of course, the team that really Susie had started putting together, with Susie and I doing our roles, and then, of course, having Fabrizio around, Tony just like driving the targeting with James and Tim Saylor, James Blair, who's now White House Deputy Chief of Staff, and, Taylor, who's another White House Chief of Staff on the comm side, but earlier he was on the super PAC. I mean, it was a great team of people who were unified in one mission and one mission only, and that was winning. There's no jockeying for who's going to do what. It's about accomplishing the mission. The mission was the man, working for what he wants to accomplish for the country. So that kind of made things a little easier. Plus, in campaigns, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, high stress. You get a sense of camaraderie that you work with people, and everybody has their back. So
it's like gallows humor at some level.
There's a ton of gallows humor. Yeah. I mean, I used to say that I could get whacked at any particular moment. So going in with a sense of an attitude of I'm just going to do what I've spent the last 35 years doing, but I learn something new every day.
I mean, that is a distinction. I'll be honest. That has been your MO since the moment you stepped foot into politics.
Right.
Which is no 2 cycles are alike.
Nope.
I'm going to learn something new every day.
Yeah.
We're going to put in place something that is based upon what I've learned rather than the way everybody has done it up to this point.
Well, that and also, what really drove, I guess, the necessity, or what drove our ability to target and talk to new groups of voters, whether they were Hispanics, whether they were black men, whether they were white working class without college degrees, those were the folks we needed to actually win. And so, we improved our numbers everywhere. I mean, we won Long Island.
Yeah.
Every single county in the United States went more conservative. We increased our voter share in all 50 states. California, New York, Florida. Look what we did to Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
So the level of discipline internally within the campaign, we had developed this list of persuadable voters that Tony and Tim Saylor had spent, weeks, hell, months, and we tested and counter tested and stress tested and all of these particular segments of the electorate that we needed to increase our vote share with. And that process stayed with us And what was weird was when the coup happened, right? Because that's basically what it was when they
Got rid of Joe.
Well, they got rid of Joe. The coup, everything was geared toward Biden, and we're sitting there looking at ourselves, and we're like, we just spent $30 million
right.
on all this data, but the one thing that we realized was the issues, the underlying issue set, and the underlying persuadable voters really at the end of the day did not change.
Yeah, that's well, I noticed. I'm glad you brought this up because remarkably disciplined campaign in terms of the way you all operated internally and what you would let the external world see, but also in terms of a campaign message, right? The messages against Joe Biden, if anything, became more acute against Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Right. You had a younger candidate, but you had a candidate who had worse tape out there.
Worse tape.
From that primary.
Target-rich
And
environment.
the issues that you're
Right.
litigating,
Yeah.
the economy. I mean, this lady has the balls to roll up and be like, I'm a champion of small businesses.
Well, because she spent that whole 2019, 2020 primary in the Democratic primary, like running to the left of everything that Joe Biden was trying to triangulate on. So the tape was fantastic. But I guess what I'm wondering, Chris, is like there's been, all these postmortems on the Kamala campaign and a lot of finger
that was
pointing and
the perfect campaign.
yeah, right.
I read that somewhere.
I remember that whole roundtable where they anticipated everything, they knew exactly what you were doing, and then they fell flat on their fucking face. I love that. I'm wondering
sorry,
from
somebody
you.
just dropped the F-bomb before I
it
had
wasn't
it.
you. Yeah, it wasn't you.
Holy
But
shit.
they did that whole thing on Pod Save America where they're like, nothing surprised us. We had planned for everything, and we were totally wrong, which I just loved listening to. But I'm curious from your perspective, was there ever a time, a moment, something that her campaign did that you were like, that's going to be a problem, that's actually smart? Was there ever a time where that happened?
I mean, I got to imagine at some point between her announcement and their convention, when it was nothing but corporate legacy media acclamation.
Coronation.
Yeah.
We went from a
Coronation.
coup to a coronation.
That's right.
I mean, really, it just that quickly. And for someone who was considered by the legacy media and by, politics at writ large, that she was not a very good vice president and a horrible communicator and all of these things, to then all of a sudden
A generational change agent.
generational change, and you're like, what the hell? And of course, we saw what was happening, and I said this to somebody a couple of weeks ago, where it's sort of like, because the campaign was at that point in such a good rhythm, and campaigns have to find a rhythm.
That's it.
I mean, timing and rhythm is actually a real thing.
It is.
And just like it is in a football game, I'm not, it's not the same, but
Momentum is real.
Momentum is real, and and this had the makings of instead of a 21-0 halftime lead. In a football game, it was more reminiscent of, a 2-0 halftime lead in a hockey game.
Yeah.
The most dangerous lead in hockey.
No, seriously. And of course, I'm a bit of a hockey nut. And so I have a little bit of an appreciation that the smallest thing, can literally change momentum on a dime. So, this, and they know that, and the media knows that. And, I refused to play baseball while they were playing hockey. And so, our entire focus was during that period of time when the coronation was happening, we were looking at our numbers and seeing that, the president's numbers never once changed. They never went down. They stayed consistent.
Yeah, we noticed
But,
that.
right, but what did change was Harris was able to consolidate.
Yeah, they reconsolidated a Democratic base.
Who was leaving because they were going with Kennedy or they were going with Stein.
I also
or,
saw an 85-year-old guy walking around, falling off stages and whatnot.
Just didn't know what planet he was on, let alone what century it was. And so, that was a moment where you're like, okay, we're gonna have to finish really, really strong. And so it. And, the boss was pissed because just from the sense of, how do they do this?
Yeah, how do they consistently
how
do
can they
this?
get away with and
They pay no price for
and I remember saying to the boss, I said, look, you'll be the first candidate in American history to beat 2 Democrat nominees in 1 year.
I bet he loved that.
Oh, loved it. It's another example of American history made in this campaign, which I call a campaign of firsts.
Yeah.
Because like every week there was a first, right? In some regard. And so there really wasn't a path, that you could go back and say, oh, I remember XYZ campaign when they did this, or, because, your experience informs.
Yep.
Right? I mean, sure shit ain't stuff they teach you in a book, right? Like, I mean, it's just doesn't happen. So, part of it is you're winging it. Part of it is you do rely on your collective experience with the team. But that's what kept the focus, the messaging. Classic example. There was one particular week during the course of the campaign in October where the Harris campaign was running over 160 different creatives on TV and digital across all platforms, broadcast, cable, cord cut, I mean, you name it. But you're talking over 116 competing messages.
Yeah.
We had 7.
Yeah.
And we drove those points continuously, and it was for the vast majority of the time it was mostly economic in nature. And they were switching back and forth between, talking about her bio and trying to inform people. And I'm thinking to myself, if they're running biographical ads in October,
not good.
They got a problem. And so, when you're an incumbent, if you're a challenger, you have to do 2 things. You have to give voters a reason to vote for you and fire the other person. And so there was always this internal battle going on as who really was the challenger.
Yep.
Right.
And who really was the incumbent. And we took the challenger. We took the challenger status just by virtue of the fact that Donald Trump had 100% name ID. What could they possibly say or do by October that anyone in the world hadn't heard?
Totally.
Right, in some form or fashion, right? We're talking about probably the most defined man in the world. Clearly, everybody's got an opinion.
Yep.
And so, how do you battle that? Well, you don't battle it; you embrace it.
Yeah. Well, you also clearly defined and didn't let her get out from underneath.
No.
Her very clear role within the Biden administration on things like immigration, border security, the economy, and everything else.
Well, it's the same thing during the primaries. I hate to always revisit that, but I think it was instructive because, the boss announces, right after, the 22 cycle, which didn't end well for anyone. And, we were looking at, the announcement and then going into, the primaries. And the whole focus up to that point was, about how great of an opponent Ron DeSantis could be. And the boss right out of the gate says, we're going to hit him. And Susan and I are like, in January?
Yeah, right.
And he's like, in January. and
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, double down. And we're like, okay, we know how to do that. And that really, I thought, set the stage for the overall disposition that the campaign would take from that point to the very end.
Yeah.
Which is, it's going to be constant. Now, I mean, honestly, I guess it was maybe late September when I started looking on the internet for countries with non-extradition treaties. I mean, and my go bag is a little larger than most people's.
I can only imagine. It
bags.
has been for years.
It has been. So I mean, we were ready to go, but as we got closer and closer to the election, that go bag became a little smaller, maybe not as much ammo. So, but
yeah, you're like, well, this might work out.
I mean, 2 weeks out, we knew.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny because one of the states that was most consistently had the president winning by outside the margin of error, anywhere from 4 to 7 points, was Arizona.
Yeah.
And so, we knew a Sunbelt strategy was not going to be in the works for them.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why we took such, an
And
aggressive
you could see
posture
them
in
begin
Nevada.
to retreat.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they were pulling.
Yeah.
They weren't buying as much, and they were really putting all their eggs in that blue wall. And I mean, it just a lot of those things clicked. But it was. And so you're seeing the manifestation of a lot of those things, come to pass now with, you shouldn't have been surprised over the course of the weekend that Donald Trump, I'll just jump right in and say it, and levied a 25% across the board tariff on Mexico and Canada. And you shouldn't have been surprised either when you woke up this morning and found out that the one in Mexico had been delayed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because this is about changing behavior, right, and attitudes and how you deal with the United States. This is a negotiating tack. And so we wake up this morning and to find out that, the Mexican government's actually going to put 10,000 troops on the border to stem the flow of fentanyl. And I don't think people have an appreciation for the fact that, nearly as many people have died from fentanyl over the, few years have died in all of World War II. And so it's an actual war. And so the first demonstration of that was, the president classifying the cartels as terrorist organizations. That gives us the ability to engage with them in a different way.
Yeah, I think, listen, I mean, we talked a lot about the campaign. This is the most professional, most successful presidential campaign that anybody has ever seen. But the president didn't stop on November 6th.
No, turns out.
Day one, he is there delivering on his promises that he made to people. People who cast their vote trusting in him, he's proving them right out of the gate. And I mean, there's no way you're surprised about that because this man had a vision in his mind.
No.
And it's not just with Mexico. I mean, Panama, we were talking about Panama earlier. The Panamanian government is now saying that they want to move China out, and it's strictly
Belt and Road is over. And that's the thing, is the breakneck speed of it. And I keep coming back to this, is for so long Americans have expected, okay, the government's going to be slow, I should lower my expectations. With Colombia, that was what, a 3-hour news cycle, if that? Like, the media can't keep up with it. Like, I saw this messaging, and I thought when you brought up fentanyl, it was particularly disgusting. What they did is you saw journalists being like, oh, it was only 43 pounds of fentanyl that was seized at the border last year. That's enough to kill 10 million people.
Right.
Yeah.
And the media can't keep up with the speed of it. Like, you saw Panama, they canceled Belt and Road.
They can't keep up with it because all they want to do is play the opposition. They don't want to observe what's actually happening. And what's actually happening is historic. This is a figure that we haven't seen in a very long time in American history. And what he's delivering in the first couple of weeks, I can only imagine what's going to happen in the next few years.
And he's in a hurry. Right. And, and I know in some form or fashion, all of us are, a product of the United States Senate. We've all spent a lot of time working in the Senate and electing senators, and all of them good people. But not everything in Washington moves at the pace of the United States Senate.
Right.
And the most deliberative body in the world. Well, it's time. The time for deliberation is over. The time for action is now.
We also have
That's
not
right.
had. We have not had. And I said this all day yesterday. We have not had a president that understands the power that they have and the leverage that they have and actually uses it. Everybody's afraid to do that, right? They rock the boat. Anytime you're talking about tariffs, all of the business community freaks out about it. Except, when you sit back and understand that Americans' leverage over the rest of the world is our economy, the size of our economy, the power of our economy, all of these things. So if you use it as leverage, for the first time in 10 years, you can get people who are responsible for fentanyl coming into our country to actually pay attention to it. This isn't a fucking high tea. Like, we're very serious about doing it. That's what I love the most about the first couple of weeks of this presidency is he's like, no. You're going to listen to this.
Yeah.
And you're going to do something about it.
It feels like a permanent campaign. Like the campaign was about maximum volume, maximum pressure, no free shots, which is a thing we always say.
That's my people say, why did you say that? I'm like,
no free shots.
Yeah, you take a shot at a incoming ambassador to the United States from England. Well, why'd you do that?
But I feel like that's informed.
No
and
free shots on goal.
It's carried over now to the administration in a major way. This strategy of sort of maximum pressure, do everything. There was like a school of thought in politics for like most of our careers where it was like, this is our message this week, and we're going to have the event and the rollout.
Infrastructure
and this is
week.
the press, strategy. And it's like, no, you can actually do multiple things and be successful. In fact, sometimes by enacting a bunch of things at the same time and exuding maximum pressure, as the United States of America, you can get shit done.
Yeah, they pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Well, and when you say that, the permanent campaign, look, good politics has always made good policy. Just, and I think the politicians that don't understand that or heed that are the ones that, fade in obscurity. They never get anything done. You got to be gutsy. I mean, look, what could they possibly do to him now? I mean, they tried to put him in jail. They tried to kill him. What he has two shits to give, right? Except let's get this stuff done. So,
but also a basic understanding, far as a master's degree understanding, based on the first 4 years, of the power and the limits of mass media distribution, right? A media center that is entirely focused on trying to undercut everything that you're doing. And by going outside of that, and being able to talk directly to people, not just through the press conferences he's doing all the time, the things that you developed in, during the course of the campaign, the maligning of characters and the maligning of intent falls away. Like it probably just doesn't have the same sort of meaning to a Trump administration that it would just be to somebody who just showed up on the scene.
True, but it doesn't mean obviously that it still doesn't happen. I mean, look, what happened with ABC News.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I hate to single
They're building
them out,
a presidential library, from what I understand.
Yeah, I mean, but they knew what was said that day, and there have been plenty. I mean, look, I had to deal with it on the campaign toward the end
Directly.
when an online publication decided to literally print defamatory comments about me, wrote a whole story about it, then did podcasts about it. Actually,
it's so sick they do this kind of garbage.
Oh yeah, and with this belief that there's not going to be any recourse. Well, those days are long gone.
That's it.
I mean, those days are long gone, and you just can't do that. That kind of thing anymore without there being, serious consequences. And it's something I'm going to live with and I'm going to follow through with. That much I can tell you. So,
let me put a finer point on that because I don't want you to have to do that. But what happens when you can't beat a campaign or an operation is that the press, in conjunction with your activist left, basically try to take the head off the snake in campaigns. Like, if you can't take the candidate out, Lord knows they've tried. Indictment, 47 different indictments, nonsense bullshit, 2 assassination attempts, all kinds of different stuff. If none of that shit works, what they try to do is get as close to the inner circle as possible.
Correct.
And lop the head off that way. Like, I've been a victim of it over the years. Anybody who's gotten into a consequential position where they're actually doing damage to the left narrative control in this country has suffered it. Nobody more so than this guy to my right, who honestly, there was something that was posted like, oh, this guy's a profiteer. He's profiteering off of the Trump campaign, which for anybody who's ever read an FEC sheet, like if you spent 1 minute around politics, you look at it and you know that that's a completely bullshit case.
Yeah.
But if you know nothing and you're willing to just write anything to
If you
try
have no
to
integrity,
sabotage,
you're willing to lie about
well,
it.
not only did they do that, but then the lead writer went out and did a podcast and made it even worse.
Yeah.
And
it has an impact. That's why they do it.
Well,
they don't do it because they just don't like Chris LaCivita.
No. Yeah, the entire goal was, I think it was to inflict maximum harm on the campaign, the candidate, myself,
Undermining morale, undermining donor confidence.
creating division,
Yep.
and the donor confidence part too. They wanted to think that the consultants were ripping off Donald Trump. Yeah, right.
I mean, good luck.
I mean,
Yeah.
please. And when you've been in the business for as long as I have, 35 years, the most important commodity is your reputation.
Totally right.
Right. And so when you're dealing with a frontal assault on that, you have to deal with that, but at the same time, you can't allow it to deviate. You can't take your eye off the ball, which is actually winning. And you're in the crunch time of a campaign, and you've got it literally is to create chaos and division.
They're trying to take your eye off the ball. I mean, they're trying to make you have
and
to
dry up the money that
Yeah.
that is obviously that the campaign is raising, that it's using to be effective. And of course, with the Harris campaign raised, I think, $2.5 billion.
Jeez.
Because they're literally running around saying, "Oh, we didn't have enough time to actually perfect our perfect campaign."
Yeah.
You fucking break. Right? I mean, it's
It
just
seems like the longer it went, the more imperfect it became.
I mean, you've given me 6 more weeks, the result would have been a whole lot, probably even a wider margin.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's part of modern campaigns, but that's got to stop now.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's got to stop now,
Yes.
and it's not just for the people that are engaged in the process. And we've obviously seen the courts, and we've seen, people taking a different look that maybe this is getting a little out of hand, and it's sending a message. But at the same time, it's actually good for the consumer, right? The voter. They've got to know that, because right now they don't. I mean, the media has one of the lowest approval ratings of any institution really that's in existence, and they wonder why they're laying off. And I mean, if people just covered their news and left the editorial comment out of it and left the agenda out of it, I mean, I'm not going to name them, but there are publications in D.C. right now that are dealing with they're cleaning out people because they're not conforming to this one very leftist perspective. And those things have impact. But I dare to say that the most that you'll start seeing, I believe you'll actually start seeing, because the pendulum's moved so far. If you're not behind it, you're in front of it, and that pendulum's got a blade on it. And right now, at least from the media standpoint, I think people are getting the joke that they're going to have to at least try to be a little bit more objective in how they portray things, because that's, at the end of the day, the American people don't want to be told; they just want to know.
Yeah.
Right. And there is a difference.
Yeah, huge difference. We only have a couple minutes left, Chris. I imagine you're still talking to the boss.
I don't disclose or talk about that stuff, but yes, I talk to a lot of people in administration. I will tell you, the boss left me this message, which I of course I saved, because he left me a voicemail message, and about something he wanted me to do on the fentanyl stuff, and something that I'm working on and we'll be talking about in the not too distant future. But and then he left it. It was Thanksgiving morning at 12:18 a.m.
Wow. Guy does not stop working.
12:18 a.m.
He doesn't.
And it's a very detailed. Hey, Chris, it's your favorite president. And I swear to God, and I look at it and I'm like, it's 12:18 a.m. My ass was sound asleep. I was duck hunting that morning, so I was literally wiped out. And then, but the first thing I say to myself is, shit, the one phone call I don't want to miss.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, all right, I'll call him back Thanksgiving morning. So it's 9 a.m. I'm literally in the kitchen cooking my in-laws breakfast, because I'm a good son-in-law. And he calls me 9 o'clock. I'm like, hey, boss, did you get my voicemail message? I did. Who'd you play it to? My in-laws. It was so funny. It was great.
Like,
It was
I
great.
thought you'd be watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
No. Truth be told, it's in the background, but no one pays attention to it. But it was quite amusing. But they're running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and of course the inaugural was nuts. And that's the other thing. I mean, you go straight from a campaign like that, and in which we had prepared for that campaign to last 60 days longer, right, for 3 counts, and we had this amazing operation that I think we've really changed how Republicans wage their efforts. The RNC was a phenomenal partner this cycle in doing that. And we're going to actually seek to codify a lot of those things that were done, that we had come up with during the course of the year in terms of ballot integrity and ballot security. I mean, because Americans really care about that. and you hear about stolen elections, you hear about these things that happen in other countries, and people look at us as an example, and so we've got to obviously maintain the integrity of all of that, as well as the getting rid of all the bad apples that decided that the weaponization of the DOJ was a good thing.
Yeah, right.
Right. So
Right.
And that changes perceptions on how people look at us around the world, but also it also gives despots and the bad guys around the world the opportunity to say, well, hell, if they can do it in America, then I can get away with it here.
Yeah.
So the fact that President Trump won in the manner in which he did by not only winning the Electoral College but winning the popular vote has really given. I don't think people really understand the impact it's had worldwide. Just the sheer volume of calls and people that I've talked to, not just here but in other countries, who are just like, wow. And it gives them that degree of hope. So the golden age isn't just a slogan. I think we're living it. But again, all of those gains that we made in the election, all of those voters, we don't own them.
Nope.
We're merely renting them. Mm-hmm. And in order for us, at least from the Republican standpoint, for us to maintain that coalition and make that coalition more of a permanent part of the party, we have to accomplish what we said we were going to accomplish, which is something that the boss is keenly aware of, which is why he's in a hurry, which is why there's this shock and awe, really, for lack of a better word, a term going on with what he wants to accomplish, because we have a limited amount of time and we got to get these things done. And so I think that's being reflective in the speed in which they're doing things.
And on that note, one thing I definitely wanted to add is not only do you have a point of pride of being a part of this election victory, but seeing the results of it. So I live in North Carolina. I'm a North Carolinian. And seeing J.D. Vance is there today.
Yeah.
We've seen the Army Corps of Engineers has just been deployed. They're going to work. They're helping the people there. The result of his election is not just a win for President Trump, but you're seeing right now the result of that, and you should feel a tremendous amount of pride for Americans are being helped right now, which shows in the case of Western North Carolina, not only was it willful that they were being ignored by the Biden-Harris administration, but now they're seeing that there's actual hope, that someone is there who actually cares and is making a change for their lives for the better.
It was a great thing to be a part of. It's, obviously the crowning achievement for me personally. And I've always told the president, I appreciated the opportunity just to be a part of it. Really,
yeah, I mean,
really,
well
it's a
said.
great thing. And you guys have been great. And I mean, look, we had a lot of friends. We had a handful of not so friends, but
the speed bumps.
But
couple of speed bumps.
But I mean, that's the nature of politics. But
wouldn't be worth doing if it wasn't hard to do it.
That's 100%. Nothing good comes easy.
Yeah, 100%. Well, listen, we've known each other for almost 20 years. I can just tell you, there's nobody that I felt more comfortable with you and Susie running this campaign, not only just in the integrity of the campaign, giving us the best shot to win, but also building a culture that allowed this president to do what it is that he was saying he wanted to do.
Right.
And I think all of that's coming to fruition. Can't thank you enough, not only for your friendship here to the program, but what you've meant to our listeners and everybody else. I think you might understand, because, this guy's an Italian with a healthy ego. but
I get my politics from the Irish side. I'm just saying.
I can appreciate that.
I'm always looking for a fight.
I can appreciate it, but there's
and
a lot of
anybody
people
out there that doubts that,
oh, don't doubt
stand the fuck by.
Thanks for everything, pal.
Thanks, man.
Really appreciate it,
guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you.